When I was a kid, when I was young, I was really heavy. I had 2 sets of teeth. I was almost legally blind. I had horrible acne.
Jeez. Good thing you weren't a horse. They'd have shot you.
Somebody should have. They put me out. You gave her what? What is she on? And he goes, well, she's on so much oxy that if we put her on more morphine, we're going to kill her. So what we had to do was put her on ketamine. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is she tripping? And he's like, oh yeah. She's
dancing with God right now.
She's talking to stuff.
Yeah.
Accept what you've done. Accept also that you will leave this shit, this component of your character, this brokenness, this mess, this sadness, this anguish. You'll leave it dead here in the jungle.
Hey everybody. Pretty excited about today's episode of the Army of Great Men. I've got my guy Cody Lakevold with me. I grew to know Cody about a year ago, quickly becoming fast friends, and
yep.
Cody's the founder of a group called Longship.
Yep.
And we're going to learn about Longship. We're going to learn about Cody. We're going to learn about healing. We're going to learn about some stories that might want to get a couple tissues ready. There's some hard ones here today, but it's some pretty profound stuff. And if you're one of the people who was drawn to this show for the purpose of inspiration, for the purpose of learning from really great humans, you're going to get that in spades today. So let's go. New episode. Let's go. Okay, Cody. Thanks for coming on, buddy. This is great.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so fun to have you here. Yeah. So, like I said, you and I met probably a little over a year ago. Started talking. It was right when I was sort of getting the podcast going, and you were pretty deep in the plans on this new initiative called Longship, which just so happened to be almost perfectly aligned with what I was trying to do on the Army of Great Men.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool. But maybe before we get into your story, what the heck is Longship? What is this thing?
The Longship is an organization that was founded by myself and 3 other individuals, John Trapp, Ryan Collins, and Commander Mark Devine. It's an organization where essentially our goal is to build healthy communities of men. That's our job. So to put men together, coalesce them in one space, and then work through our shit together. And that's what we do. We see this as a profoundly healing endeavor. We've got a lot of brokenness out there presently. And so this is our way of us leaning on each other. Therapy is, an avenue that can be utilized for some mental health healing. But community, there's nothing like building community. And so for us, our initiative is to bring these men together and work on our stuff together so that we can be in service to the rest of the world. We can be in service in the way that we need to be to our kids, to our wives, our families, our friends, bring the best of ourselves to our vocation. That's our job.
Yeah. And it's working, right? Like I'm lucky enough to be a part of the inaugural crew. Now there's a second crew, but I'm lucky enough to be a part of the first one, which is
founding crew.
Such an honor. Like it really is. It's so cool. And what do we have in the first crew? Maybe 15 guys or whatever. 15, yeah. And, in pretty short order, like I'm already building, just really like relationships that I know are going to be with me for the rest of my life.
Really deep relationships
with people who are already making me a better man just by being around them. Yeah. And vice versa. Like we're all helping each other grow. And, as we were talking about, before we turned the camera on, we were talking about how society now just lives in this state of shortcuts, right? Yes. Everybody wants a shortcut and take a pill to do this or, that or whatever. Like, God forbid you just like roll up your sleeves and do a bunch of fucking work, right? Exactly. Like, God forbid.
That's right.
And, God forbid it would take more than a couple minutes to get through it, right? But with what's happening at Longship, it's that, like, you're building foundations that'll last a lifetime.
That's the idea, right? I mean, for us, healing can't come overnight. It just doesn't. And so for us, best avenue that we have is to heal together.
Yeah.
I mean, healing in isolation is a profoundly difficult thing, and healing in a vacuum seems almost impossible to me.
Yeah.
My experience with healing has always been like this. with people that I love and trust, and that I get to lean on, that's where healing is found for me. And so it's fun to be able to bring this to, a community. Yeah.
It's funny. Like that was, when I was going through some pain and going through some stuff, there was, when in doubt, focus on gratitude.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
And there was a moment when I was thinking about how lucky I was to have so many incredible mentors in my life. Cause like my network it's something I'm extremely proud of, not just the number of people in my network, but the caliber of the people in my network. So when I was going through some tough times, divorce, my mom was dying, just going through a whole bunch of things kind of all at once, things that like, I didn't know how many people go through that shit, but it's like,
and you got a bunch of curveballs all at once.
It's all at once for sure. But had I not had the conversations that I did with other people who've been through it and who had already climbed that mountain and would show me that, hey, look, if you do this and this and this, you're going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the proof was that they were there.
Yeah.
And they were once down here.
They gone through their own shit.
They were in the ditch. They pulled their way out.
Yeah.
And then I looked back and I looked at all the people that I know, and you and I both know people. Everybody listening to this knows people who never recovered from trauma.
Without question.
And that gratitude that I had for the people in my life, and then recognizing that there were a whole bunch of other people that weren't lucky enough to have that, that was my inspiration for saying, I got to start sending some messages out there so that, even if this just reaches one person and that one person, went this way instead of that way in life, great. Like I'll take that trade all day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The best.
Yeah. It's been a real honor to be able to, connect with you and connect with the guys in our boat crews. I mean, these are communities of men that, as a founder of this, I'm just inspired every single time we get together. I mean,
every time
I'm learning so much from everybody. And, our stated purpose when we started is this survive to thrive mentality. I don't want to get guys back to a fucking baseline. You know what I mean?
No, we're leveling up.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. We are going to level up and continuously level up, and we're going to do it together.
Yeah. And it's been really neat to watch because it's not just one way we're leveling up. Right. Like there are physical challenges.
Yes.
There are new, like Mark Devine last month, he challenged us to create a new morning routine.
Exactly right.
Right. And an evening routine. And so we've got accountability where, everybody's got their new routine and they sort of report them to the group. And then there's like some of my favorite ones, because I think almost everybody in the group has kids, just about everybody. I think maybe a couple don't, but just about everybody. Yeah. And of course, like moms get together and they talk about being parents all the time.
Right.
Dads don't do that.
Right.
Like,
we're funny
like outside of the hockey rink or the baseball diamond, like we really don't talk that much about that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
In this group, it's like probably 30% of the content is about, oh, you wouldn't believe what my kid did the other day.
Being a father.
Yeah. Yeah. And then talking about different ways to handle it. Mm-hmm. And it's also really neat because we've all got kids of different ages. So like some of the guys with older kids, they go, oh yeah, I remember when my kid was 9. Yeah, cool.
Right.
I know you think this is the right idea because that's what we did.
Give that a couple years.
Try it this way. Yeah. And it's just such a gift to be a part of it. And, so we're going to have you and John and Ryan on a separate show. We're going to talk very specifically about, all the goals with Longship. Mark Devine's a bit of a different animal. For those of you who don't know Mark Devine, I would recommend you pause this, whatever you're listening to right now. Just pause this thing right now. Google Mark Devine.
Watch his podcast. Like
this guy's a unit.
Oh my God, it's incredible. Mark was. I met Mark the first time when I was building an executive retreat for an organization here in Edmonton. We were out in San Diego, and I was working with Jared Smith at the time, and Jared had this contact with Devine because he had gone through this SEAL Fit experience with him about 10 years prior after Jared went through his own tragedy. And so I asked him to reach out to him because I needed somebody to speak to my executive team on components of leadership and partnership, functioning as a team, teamwork, teammates, that kind of thing. And so I asked him to bring in Mark. And gratefully, Mark was willing and able. He's a busy man. Mark is doing a lot of stuff. I mean, this man's stated mission is to positively impact 100 million lives before he's in the ground.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we got him in, and I had breakfast with him before he had his talk. And like, you know how every now and again you encounter somebody where you can tell this not just the strength of his character or the strength of his intellect, but he's just got a fucking ferocious heart.
He's got a force.
This guy is like Yoda. And you know, he and I have talked about it before, because he's got this kind of this way about him. He is so brilliant, but so kind and compassionate, and truly gives a shit about how people are doing in this world.
Yeah.
And so it was a real
honor. And all the while doing it with the most logical, common sense ideas you've ever, like, it's like, well, of course, like, why aren't we doing that?
Right. Exactly.
Duh.
Right.
Why aren't we doing that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet the guy will speak on Eastern philosophy. I mean, he's deeply philosophical human. Yeah. So he went and
what is he? He's in his mid
50s?
Mid 50s?
I don't know. The guy,
he looks like
he could be 100. He could be 20. Like Mark, I don't think he's Benjamin Button. He's aging backwards, I think.
Yeah.
But Mark is, he gave his talk. And while everybody was enamored, I was blown away by him. So I told him after the talk, I don't know how we're going to make this work, but I have to work with you.
Yeah.
Like everything you said, I feel like men need to hear. And, you know, lo and behold, fast forward a couple of years later, and here we are, you know, we've created this thing, and, you know, couldn't have done it without, you know, my partners, John Trapp and Ryan Collins. I mean, my God, like those boys, you know, it was nice to have the vision, but I had no idea what to do with it.
Sure.
And then these guys come in, and John's got this profound background in health and wellness and communication facilitation. And Ryan is this profound connector of human beings.
Yeah.
And so these four working in tangent, us all together, I mean, it's been a pretty remarkable experience.
It's been pretty awesome to watch just from the sidelines. And not like, I sort of get two seats. I knew you guys before you were getting it going, and then to be a part of your inaugural crew is really neat. But yeah, like Ryan or John is a facilitator. You know, like he brings a lot to the table.
He sure does.
But the way that he keeps the meetings not just on track, but on point as well. Like they're just like, without being too regimented, it's just.
The guy is the consummate professional.
Yeah. Like, it's great.
Yeah. He does an amazing job.
Yeah. Ugly bastard, but that's not his fault.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, the guy's got glutes for days. He's got a great ass on.
Yeah. He's a handsome devil.
He sure is. Yeah. My boys are good looking boys.
Yeah. So now your story, Cody, played your personal story.
Yeah.
It was a big part of the inspiration.
Yeah.
With Longship.
Yes.
Right. And your healing journey and what you went through.
Yeah.
Why don't we start at the beginning? Your childhood, like good childhood, good family, life's good.
You know, born and raised in St. Albert, Alberta, Canada, and born to a mother and father who were profoundly good human beings. You would have loved my dad. My dad was a stockbroker, right? My mom was a pediatric nurse. Very loving parents. I had an older brother, Jesse, who was 2 years my senior, who was my best friend in the world.
Yeah.
You know, like that was the family that I grew up in. My dad, you know, started making good money when I was about 10 years old. And, you know, we moved into a neighborhood in St. Albert called Regency Heights, which interestingly, I've just moved back to. But back then they had just constructed this new neighborhood. So we were one of the first houses in there. And the tagline for Regency Heights at the time was "Where privilege has its place." It just made you puke, like every time you drive past it. Like I was waiting for people to show up.
Like that was the actual sign?
Yeah. Like just wanting to get our houses egged. Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. Yeah. That sign stuck around for a couple years.
Well, and now of course the new town slogan in St. Albert is, "Do you have any idea who my father is?" Right? Isn't that the town slogan? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's on the sign. Yeah.
But
I was born and raised there, and I had, you know, I had an ideal childhood. But around the time that I was 10 years old, my mom was hit by a truck sitting at a stoplight, and she suffered some brain damage, spinal cord damage, and ended up getting prescribed OxyContin. She lost her vocation. She wasn't able to work anymore. And her past caught up to her. She had a really cruel, tough childhood,
Yeah.
And she ended up spiraling into a depression. And that paired with an OxyContin addiction made her an increasingly interesting human being.
Okay.
It robbed her of her life. And so we, as a family, we used to be very my dad was gregarious and charismatic. And so we were people about town. And, as mom got worse and worse, we became more insular,
sure.
Right? And kind of trying to hide all that from the public. We didn't want people to know how bad mom was doing. Yeah. Mom didn't want people to know, obviously. So things got a little rocky there for, mom ended up being an OxyContin addict for 20 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. And
what a toll.
The wrong drug for fucking long-term prescriptions.
No shit.
It's just incredible to me that doctors still do this.
Yeah.
The drug has its utility, right? Like if you're injured.
Short term.
Exactly. If you surgery, then sure, a week on Oxy, fine. But 20 years, my mom, by the time she came off of it, and she did come off later in life, but, not without a tremendous effort on her part and some, additional tragedy. But she was on so much Oxy. I remember I was watching, Ronnie Coleman, bodybuilder, right?
Yeah. Yep.
One of the world's most famous bodybuilders. So he's got a bunch of spinal issues, and he was talking about being on OxyContin, and they were prescribing about, I think, 240 milligrams.
Yeah.
My mom was on over 700.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like she was becoming like the fucking Pablo Escobar of
Jeez.
The amount of Oxy that was in her system on a daily basis.
It's actually incredible that she was ever able to get off of it.
Yeah. I mean, it was
once you're at that level.
Incredible that she survived it.
Yeah. How does
it's insane that it didn't kill. And, there've been times where, I'd come home from work and she'd have chewed her Oxy.
Let's face a little closer that way.
Yeah. She'd chew her OxyContin. And so, the issue with that is it's meant to be slow release.
Sure,
right?
but if you chew it, it's probably a little faster.
Yeah, and so she'd overdose and, rush her to the hospital, and the doctors would take a look at her prescriptions, and be like, holy shit, do you realize how much Oxy your mom's on? Like,
yeah,
it's you assholes that keep prescribing
it
and selling it to her. Like, she's not scoring this on the street.
Yeah.
So, it was tough for mom, and it was tough on all of us. It ended up, she became interesting. She became a horrible gambling addict.
Oh my God.
And would disappear for weeks on end. And, there was some tough times with that family, but there was always this deep, deep love and affection for each other, despite the fact that, mom could be very cruel.
Right.
She'd be really hard. It wasn't my mom. It was this demon, this thing.
Of course, it had her.
Yeah, exactly right. She was in the throes of it, and she was owned by it.
Yeah.
And so, as things progressed, it got a little shaky. My brother ended up going off to play college ball. He was a pitcher, really talented baseball player. And so he ended up playing baseball in Merced, California, leaving me by myself with my folks, whom presented its own opportunity to be relatively, I got to lean on my dad a lot, which thank God I had an amazing father.
Right.
Like my dad, Dirge, was just a rock star.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like he's the kind of idyllic father that everybody would want.
Right.
He's that kind of guy. Like just the most loving person in the world. Was stern, like his nickname was Hammer. My friends gave him that nickname.
Yeah.
Because he looked intimidating. He was a big Norwegian guy. He's a handsome guy, but he had like a Lanny McDonald mustache and big wings. I mean, this guy marched to the beat of his own drum. He didn't give a shit what you thought of him.
Love it.
Yep.
Sounds like a man's man.
Full confidence, this boy. Oh yeah. And yet, Dad and I, when we started working together, I joined him in finance once I got my psychology degree. And
it's interesting you have your psychology degree. I didn't know that.
I think I got a degree in psychology strictly because I wanted to understand my mom.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's true of a lot of people that go that route, is that there's kind of this familial component of curiosity surrounding what the hell is going on with my family.
Yeah, of course.
And for me, that was certainly the case.
It's funny. So like you and I both have a background in the finance world.
Yeah.
My major was econ. My minor was psych.
Was it?
If I could go back and do it again, I would have had psych as my major and econ as my minor.
Yeah.
Because like in the financial world, I would use, you use econ.
Of course.
But you use psych in every meeting, every day, every meeting,
without
everything.
question. Yeah. You are you're not a therapist, but you have to understand people's mentality. When 100%. You're managing money, there's nothing more personal to people than their finances.
And understanding how they look at it and understanding how they view risk and all that stuff.
Like you get to know your clients better than some of their wives do. Like it's a funny thing.
It is.
You get real close to these people and there's that level of trust that they show you. Like this is how I spend my capital.
Yeah.
And that tells you a lot about a person.
Absolutely.
So psychology comes into play in a profound fashion.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So, we're on the topic of your dad and, so you're raised by a man's man, a guy that your buddies all looked up to and
yet like when I would show up to work, the dad and I would start every day with a hug and a smooch on the cheek every single day.
Yeah.
Like at that point, I'm a 24 or 25-year-old man.
Yeah.
Coming into the office in a suit. My dad's, good morning, son. Hug and a kiss.
Awesome.
We'd have toast together in the morning. And then at the end of the day, same thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little tequila.
Yeah.
After the bell, and then a hug and a kiss.
Yeah.
And that was the way we would end our day. Yeah. Like that was my dad. When I joined my dad at the office, my first day of work, I'll never forget it. He sat me down across the desk and said, okay, so listen, he goes, here's the deal. You are more than welcome to work with me. And I'm proud of you for joining this vocation. It's like, it's a good vocation. It's tough. It's really tough. Mm-hmm. This job is such that, and this is true, you can, I'm sure, identify with this. On the good days, it is the best job in the world.
Yeah.
On the bad days, like 2008, 2009, 2010,
it's some hard phone calls.
It's the worst job on the planet. Like you have to be able to manage this.
Yeah.
Compartmentalization, you can't bring this stuff home. You've got to leave it where it is. You still have to engage in the rest of your life. So,
which is hard to do when you care about your client.
Exactly right. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
And so Dad just said, the second that this job gets in the way of us as father and son, you're fired. Yeah. You are fired.
Yeah.
You are going to lose your job. So just so we're clear, like this comes first.
Love it.
You're my son first. Yeah.
Love it.
That was my dad.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Really cool guy. So we got to work together for 10 years. And, at the time my brother had come home from playing baseball in California, and my brother, just like Jesse was, you would have loved Jess. You would have loved my family. Like my family's cool.
I'm sure I would have. Yeah.
Jesse was like just, when I was a kid, when I was young, I was really heavy. I had 2 sets of teeth. I was almost legally blind. I had horrible acne.
Jeez. Good thing you weren't a horse. They'd have shot you.
Somebody should have. It took me out to pasture. It was looking rough. And then, it was like, and then there's my brother. My brother was lean and tall and like strikingly handsome guy.
Yeah.
Really good looking guy.
Yeah.
He also just happened to be very smart and very charismatic and kind. And he was that kind of an asshole.
Beauty.
Like he's just one of those guys who you're like, holy shit, this guy's got the whole package.
Yeah.
And he really did. But there was a lot of pressure on my brother that I don't think I understood because I was too busy being jealous of him.
Sure.
But Jesse, his nickname was Lake Show because everybody told him you're going to the show. Like he was a strong pitcher. There was interest in him.
Yeah.
And so I think when he didn't make the major leagues, it was such a crushing defeat for him.
Yeah. That he probably felt like he let other people down too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think Jesse was never of the mindset of himself. Like he always cared about everybody else.
Sure.
He didn't really give a shit about himself, which was the problem.
Right.
And so when he came home, he started throwing himself in the bottle and, alcohol, man, like that is a scary drug.
Yeah.
Holy God, is that a scary drug?
Yep.
And I watched it eat my brother. And so my dad and mom, mom's addicted to Oxy at the time. And Jesse becomes a profound alcoholic.
Really?
Really scary alcoholic.
Oh, shit.
And just starts drinking his life away.
And this is at what age? He's mid-20s?
Yeah, he's his mid-20s, starting in his mid-20s, and then it's just getting worse and worse year after year, right? And like now binge drinking.
Right.
And so
in plain sight, like you all know what's going on.
Oh yeah, like he can't hide. He couldn't hide it.
Right.
Eventually, he would start trying because there'd be conversations of like, I think you have a problem. Like we need to rectify this because it's starting to cost you your job and debilitate you. And Jesse got to a point where he would start drinking on a Monday and have a beer or two just to convince himself that he could have a beer or two without getting shit-faced.
Yeah.
And by the end of that week, I would know there's a problem because he would stop communicating with me. And so a couple of days would go by and I would have to go by his condo to check in on him. And he would drink 1 to 2 40s in a day.
Oh my God.
And I would find him and he'd just be in a puddle of his own vomit and just like passed out, debilitated. So I'd have to pick him up. And sometimes, most of the time, my dad would come with me. We'd have to carry him into the bath and clean him up and then take him to my dad's house to live with my dad to dry out. So there was a lot of that back and forth. And a lot of that was a ton of pressure on my father, who loved nothing more than his children and his wife. Yeah. His wife's an Oxycontin addict, and his son is an alcoholic, and he's watching both of them die. And so I think the stress of that, it's impossible to say, but from my perspective, the stress of that certainly contributed to him eventually developing Parkinson's. So he got diagnosed in 2012 with Parkinson's. And the biggest enemy with, as it pertains to Parkinson's, is stress, right? Like you want to ensure that you manage your stress because it will
fast track pretty quick.
Yeah. It's like pouring gasoline on it.
Yeah.
And he got really sick really, really fast here and spent some time in Kelowna. He took his wife out to Kelowna and hopped in his boat. We had a Malibu. He hopped in our wakeboarding boat and went out to the middle of the lake and ended it and put himself into the Okanagan. And
jeez.
That was the end of my father.
God.
And I'll never forget that phone call from my aunt telling me that they found my dad's boat floating in the middle of the lake at 3:00 in the morning, empty. So, we went out, and at the time I was married to Jolene. Jolene was my ex-wife, and she's the gal who gave me the greatest gift in the world in terms of, my baby. Yeah. Adela.
Yeah.
And Adela had not yet, she was about to turn 1. And Dad his life ended 2 days before her first birthday.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was an interesting first birthday because I had to fly out to Kelowna and search the lake with the police for 3 days. And after a 3-day search, we had to give up. And during that time, we had to have a birthday party for my daughter, which sounds a little grisly, but I got to tell you, Dirge, nothing is more uplifting than seeing your child happy.
Sure.
And so to have this little 1-year-old and, went out, bought some party hats, bought a cake, bought some presents. I had my aunts and uncles in town because they were going through this, horrible situation with me, and they're, equally as devastated. And we still have this little party. God bless my family, And so we're watching this little girl smash her head into a chocolate cake and giggling. I don't care.
Cures a lot of things.
Yeah, it sure does. So that was hard, really hard. And, had to come back and try to figure out how to continue the practice without my father, without my mentor and my business partner. And I had no real guidance. Ended up partnering with another individual that, who just did not work out.
Yeah.
No. And 10 months after my father passed away, my brother was living with my mom. They were, God, misery loves company. And they're both just dipping hard into their addictions now. They were before, but
now this was on a mission.
Try to numb everything. Like let's just forget he died.
Yeah.
And so Jesse's just binge drinking with my mom, who's just amping up her oxy. And one night, 10 months later, my brother fell through a plate glass table in my mom's basement, severed his carotid artery, and died.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and my mom found him. Oh. Yeah. So we had to, this is the part of the podcast, by the way, where Dirk was talking about with the whole Kleenex thing.
Jeepers.
Hang on, I swear to God, there's levity here.
There is.
But Jesse, he passed, and so I had to go and get my mom. My mom and I were not on good terms. She was just so sick, and her mind was so corrupted with all the drugs and all of her mental health issues. not being obviously taken care of, that she and I were really struggling. And I was doing everything I could to keep my family alive, and I was failing at it.
Yeah.
And so, with Jesse now dead, it was just me and Mom. So we had the funeral for Jess. And then the next day was my birthday. And Mom, I get a phone call from Jolene telling me that she got a phone call from some paramedics. Mom was at her condo. We had moved her into a condo that was close to our place so I could look after her.
Yeah.
Mom was on a stool in the condo and just raging on oxy, fell off the stool and broke her humerus. And so she's now in the hospital. So we got to go and see her in the hospital. And I'm at work because I'm figuring this is how I'm going to spend my birthday. I just need detachment. I'm going to just focus on work and get some shit done. And now I'm going to the hospital. So I'm like, okay, get in the car, go and see my mom. And I like at this point, I hadn't seen my mom smile in like years. And I walk into her room and I open the drapes and there's my mom. And she's got this spaghetti arm because she just destroyed her humerus and her shoulder. Like she just blew it up.
Yeah. And
she's got this huge grin on her face. And I'm looking at her like, so I turned to the doctor and I said, like, you gave her what? What is she on? And he goes, well, she's on so much oxy that if we put her on more morphine, we're going to kill her. So what we had to do was put her on ketamine. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is she tripping? And he's like, oh yeah. She's
dancing with God right now.
She's talking to stuff.
Yeah.
So here's something cool. So they put her on ketamine before they put her in the ambulance. By the time they get her in the ambulance, she's rolling on it. She ends up telling me that, I sit by her bed and, hi, honey, how are you doing? And, I'm holding my mom. I'm like, okay. She's like, actually, she goes, I'm great. I'm like, why? Why are you great? She's like, yeah, I had a conversation with your dad and your brother on the way here. And they rode in the ambulance with me and they told me they're fine. Everything's okay. They're not in pain anymore. And also that I need to get my shit together. I need to get off of oxy because I want to have a life. And I want to have a life with you and Adela. And so I was like, that's the first time I'd ever heard my mom ever express any interest whatsoever in getting off of oxy. And my mom is a fucking lion. She's a tough lady. If you had met her, she's small and delicate and beautiful. Like my mom was just a gorgeous person. But, the same kind of raw anger that she would have during her depression and during her insanity, she would have with her commitment to solving all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So she put her entire force into getting off of drugs.
Oh my God. How good is that?
It took her just over a year. And we were at a clinic called FH Medical at the time that doesn't exist anymore, but it was owned by an amazing friend of mine, Ray Yu. And Ray got us into this. It was a semi-private clinic.
Yeah.
And they were the ones.
I know Ray.
Yeah. Ray's one of my best friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And Ray, through his clinic and through Dr. Lynn, got her off of oxy. It took us a year, but she got off of it.
And probably just gradually weaning. And
yeah, because you
can't stop that all at once.
Oh, yeah, you'll kill her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 10% every month.
Sure.
And even that 10%, she'd be sick as hell for the first week.
Oh, of course.
Unbelievably sick.
Yeah.
But we finally got her off of it. And, just by force of sheer will, my mom was just an incredible lady.
Wow.
And I got to have a relationship with her again. All of a sudden, my mom's back. Yeah, the mom that I had when I was 8 years old, all of a sudden comes back into my life.
Really?
Oh, there you are.
Where you been?
Right. And so we get to have
Imagine how it must have felt for her. Like she's living from fog for
exactly.
two decades.
And then be awake again.
My God.
Wake up in this situation that's hard, but also finding that she's got a son here who loves her desperately. And almost more importantly, she's got this little girl, my daughter, who becomes her everything.
Yeah.
And my daughter falls in love with this woman, and that becomes her favorite person in the world.
Oh my God.
And so,
how great is this?
Yeah. So we're afforded this. This is the thing about tragedy is it's profoundly important that we never lose sight in the idea that there is a ton of miracle within the confines of painful events.
Yeah.
And we have to be open to them, but they're there. And so we got to be aware of it, because that's a huge component, at least for me, for healing. So mom gets off of Oxy and, starts going on stuff and like dates.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I remember when she brought me up to the condo, and now she's on cannabis.
Okay.
So now I've got like a little mini Cheech sitting at the condo instead of, just a zombie. She's just kind of a giggly little woman. And like the cannabis totally managed her pain.
Right.
Totally. Better than Oxy ever did. Great. So I go and see Snoop Dogg at her condo, and mom's telling me like, I was on this site last night, and I've got a date lined up. And she's teary-eyed. Right? She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Am I okay?" Like, honey,
awesome.
I'm so proud of you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're mistreated, I'll probably kill somebody.
They won't find the body.
Point. Yeah. So let's be cautious.
Yeah.
But like, good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And so, me and mom, she becomes my favorite person in the world again. Every Friday I have to go with her to the clinic to get checked up. And then we would go back to Duggan's in Bonnie Doon and split a couple of pints and just hang out. And
perfect.
And she became a great sounding board for me. I was going through, stuff at the time.
Yeah.
And this was the first time that I felt like I finally had an ear to bend in the family where I could start talking about my stuff, because I was so busy trying to take care of
everybody else. Yeah, of course.
That finally I had this opportunity to open up to my mom. And so I ended up leaving stock brokerage. But that career was falling apart. My mind was getting, most assuredly I had PTSD at that time, but undiagnosed.
It's almost impossible to do that job if you're not all in.
And
you couldn't be all in that state.
And the responsibility, and this is what my dad said. I love that you said that, Dirge, because when you manage other people's money, you are either all in or you need to get the fuck out of that job. You do not deserve the responsibility.
No.
If you don't dedicate yourself fully to that vocation.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. And I was trying to. But I was, taking exams. I was failing exams for the first time. Like I was falling apart. Yeah. But I was doing everything I could. I just didn't understand why I wasn't operating at maximum capacity the way that I was. I was starting to forget stuff, and my mental clarity was getting shaken. But, I figured, okay, I left that job. I created something called Holus Productivity, which it was workforce wellness. Started getting into that gig. Which was awesome. Ran that for about 4 years. But during that time, I got a contract with a big organization here in town that had a bunch of dealings in the States. So I was working on it in North Carolina. And while I was there, my mom ended up getting quite sick and passing away.
Oh, my God.
While I was there.
What was the sickness?
She had she had pneumonia. She had it 6 times previous. And when you get pneumonia again and again, it
gets worse.
Yeah, it destroys your lungs.
Sure.
And she thought it was a cold. I remember I was talking to her on the phone and told her, it's fine that it's a cold. You should still go to a hospital.
Yeah.
Like just check to see where you're at.
Yeah.
And my mom, being my mom, was a stubborn lady. And so the night that I was due to come back home, I had my nanny go and check in on her at her condo, and my nanny found her dead in her bed.
Jeepers.
Yeah. And that, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back.
That was the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain just...
Well, because probably before that, you're probably kind of keep it together for everybody else that was still there.
Right, exactly.
And now there's nobody there.
Who do I have to help?
Now who do you have to...
Right. So there's no distraction anymore.
And no hiding from it.
Right. Now it's just me. Now I'm alone.
Yeah.
And, and my mom was so crushing because she had come so far. And finally I was getting this thing back, this relationship back with my mother. And then it was taken. And so then my mind just failed.
Yeah.
I started having these nightmares every single night, and nightmare doesn't put it right, like night terrors,
right?
Where I would watch just the most horrific scenes, and it was thematically always the same, but I'd have 3 or 4 a night. I'd have to wake up and tell myself off, crawl back into bed, and same thing. So I stopped sleeping. And the only way I could get to sleep and like sleep was I would drink myself to sleep.
Sure.
I would pour myself a 5th of bourbon, a nice tall glass of bourbon, and pound that down.
Yeah.
And realistically probably do 2 or 3 of those, right? Just to try, because I didn't want to dream either. And nothing shuts down dreaming like booze.
Yeah.
So I drink every night.
Yeah, it's not even sleep. You're just passed out.
Right, exactly.
It's a difference.
Right. Yeah, you're not getting any rest. You're just right. You're in a bit of a coma.
And then when you don't sleep, the problem's just getting compounded and compounded and compounded. Like you actually go crazy when you don't sleep.
Oh yeah,
you go nuts.
Oh, absolutely, without question. I mean, there's a form of torture, right?
Yeah.
So pretty much stopped sleeping. Then I started losing my memory. On my mom's birthday, I had my Aunt Wendy, who's my mom's sister, come out and see me. She was a clinical psychologist out of Calgary and a remarkable woman. Like my mom's side of the family, all of them, my uncle and my aunt and my mother and my grandmother, who was a pretty vile human, but unbelievably brilliant. Like, yeah, all of them card-carrying members of Mensa. Like they're just brilliant people. My aunt comes out to see me and we're having lunch and she's like, hey, so what did you do yesterday? And I'm looking at her like, fuck, what did I do yesterday? And so I reach for my phone and she goes, no. What did you do yesterday? And I just look at her like, I had work. I know because, it's Wednesday. So I had work. I can't remember exactly what I did, but and she goes, It's like, that's interesting. She's put me on the couch.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, you're fucked now.
Right, because I really can't hide. Like, there's no hiding from this woman. And she's got her laser sights on me, and I'm like, oh. And she goes, okay, so, honey, don't you think it's a little odd that you can't remember 24 hours ago? And I'm like, I guess so, but I'm under so much stress right now, Auntie, and I'm just working through stuff, and I'd lost all these people and, grieving. And she's like, She goes, Sweet, do you know what post-traumatic stress disorder is? And I'm like, yeah, I do. It's what everybody claims to have. Everybody has a hard day these days. And like, I got PTSD or I've been traumatized. Yeah. It's like, it bothers me because having grown up around people who have gone through like significant trauma, when somebody gets hurt feelings and they call it trauma, it reduces the heftiness of what trauma actually is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't have
it makes
PTSD.
The word lose its meaning.
Right.
When you use it every time you skin your knee on the playground.
Right. And so I was like, I don't have it. That's reserved for soldiers who lost their brothers in war.
Yeah.
Their brothers and sisters in war, I should say. She's like, you just lost your whole family, Cody. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you do make a salient point. Yeah. Shit. So I'm like, okay, all right, fine. So I, at that time I was also, I think I watched my mom, get infected by this victimization virus, this belief that the world has happened to her and it's out of her control, and it robbed her a lot of years, And so I was always very cautious I'd never want to hear, Cody, you're depressed, just because I lived with my mom.
But yeah, you're in the early stages of heading down the same road.
And yeah, things are getting hairy. So I go and write this psychometric evaluation. And never a good sign when your psychologist sits across from you after writing one of these and all he does is whistle. Sits there like, whoops, shit.
Right.
He's like, yeah, no. I mean, you score high, like high. And so you have acute PTSD, meaning that if we took a scan of your brain, we would see a lesion on your brain.
Right.
Okay, so now diagnosed. So what's the prescription? Prescription is I have to step away from all of my work for 3 months. I'm not allowed to work. I'm not allowed to invite anything stressful into my life. I don't know about you, Dirge, but how do you do that? Like life happens.
Yeah.
And so, but the idea is to try to create.
And then the thought about forgetting about life for 3 months is in itself a stressful act.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
Like I got to step away from this job that I'm running.
Yeah. Hope that it's still there when I get back.
Which I know it won't be. So this is, 3.5 year effort. It's going to die because of my useless broken brain. And so now I'm frustrated. And I've got to create this joyful, stress-free environment, which I've never had in my life. I don't know what that means or what that looks like. And then I have to do EMDR therapy. So I start researching EMDR and it's explained to me. And
what is EMDR for those that don't know?
EMDR therapy is a form of therapy that's specific to post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
And it focuses specifically on the patient focusing on his or her trauma while getting visual and auditory cues. And it's meant to start to take the sting out of the trauma. And PTSD, your amygdala gets locked into fight or flight. So that's what it is. I mean, it's just your inability to shut down your amygdala.
Sure.
My aunt explained it to me like this. She said, it's like you're on a plane and it's crashing, but you're also simultaneously living after the crash. So you're just always in this crash mode, which as it was explained to me, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely have this. Yeah. I can't get calm.
Jeez.
I'm having visions of, like, in the middle of the day, I'd be sitting in a meeting and I would have visions of my daughter getting hurt.
Of course, because you've just lost everybody you love.
Right.
Who do you love most?
Right.
What's your biggest fear?
Who's next?
Yeah.
Right. And exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what to do with myself. I end up sitting with, I have to go on this tour. I was working with the Mental Health Foundation at the time. I was the fund development chair for the organization. I've been working with them for, by that point, about 6-7 years. And amazing organization, incredible board of people, and a remarkable CEO by the name of Mark Corthius.
Okay.
And you know Mark.
Do I know Mark?
Mark is one of the members.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Tall, bald, and handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's Corthius.
Oh, wow.
That's my Mark.
Oh, wow.
So Mark was the CEO of the Mental Health Foundation at the time. And we sat down and I told him, I got to step away from all my duties from the board for the next 3 months because he's like, well, because what? Because post-traumatic stress disorder? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, no shit. Like, everybody knows you have this but you.
Yeah.
And like, it would be impossible for you not to have this at this point.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And that's hard, right? Like, that's a hard one to realize and like, we've all been in there, right? Like we all know that person where we're looking at him and we're like, everybody who knows him knows what the problem is.
We know you're not okay despite what you're saying. Because you can't be.
Right.
Because of course unless you're just a raging psychopath.
Right.
You're obviously not okay.
Yeah. Like you need to be something that completely, like, you need a personality disorder to not be okay, which also means you're not okay.
Yeah. So either
way, you're fucked. Yeah.
Either way, you're fucked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I end up taking leave, but Mark gives me this book, Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. He goes, I think you should read this during your downtime. So I pour through it in about 3.5 days. And there is a section of the book that discusses the utility of psychedelics in terms of resolving specifically PTSD. And the drug that was mentioned that is most effective, according to Johns Hopkins and Harvard, was MDMA.
Yeah.
And so...
And we're going to pause for 1 second here. So I've talked about psychedelics on a number of these episodes. You guys, full disclaimer, we're not telling you to go out and do a bunch of drugs.
Definitely not.
This is everything that Cody's done, everything I've done. We've had psych evaluations. We've done work in advance to make sure that this is suitable treatment for us.
We've had professionals doing this with us.
We've done it. We've done it under the guidance of professionals. We've sourced medicine that we knew was true and pure. So this is not an endorsement to go out and go to your street corner and buy, whatever they're selling you and try. That is not going to, if that's what you're taking from this, you missed it. Rewind it and listen again.
That's not on us.
That would not be on us. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So, okay. With that disclaimer.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your journey with this medicine. And actually, so I got really emotional when you talked about your mom's experience with ketamine. So the first work that I did, I went to a place here in Edmonton called Envision Mind Care.
I remember.
And it was actually my sister that suggested, because she had dealt with people who'd been through trauma, PTSD, all that shit. Not that mine's anywhere near yours, but still, everybody's got their trauma, right? Like trauma's trauma. And she suggested I do ketamine. And I talked about it, I think, on the second episode of this show. The last session, so I did 8 sessions. And in the last session, I got to hang out with my dad.
Holy no kidding.
And he gave me the biggest hug. And he said, okay, you're ready. Yeah. Like now you're ready to go do the work. Yeah. He's like, and then he goes, do the work I didn't do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God.
And just gave me a hug. And I just sat there just crying and crying and crying. Like, you know, like, cause when you're in it, like with your mom,
it's the most
who did she want to hear from more than anybody else?
That's right.
The 2 people she just lost. And then not just to hear from them, but then to get the message that they would have given you if they were there.
Right.
And you know it was right. Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of like a religious experience when
it's very much a religious, and that's the most spiritual thing. I mean, we'll talk about this, but there is components of these experiences that I've never felt closer to. It renewed my faith in God. I'm back to being a Christian again. Yeah. I gave up on the whole notion of Christianity. I especially gave up on the notion of church. Yeah. But I'm falling back in love with God and Christ and Christianity, and even, you know, components of the church community. Yeah. There's a lot of beauty there. There's a lot of frustrations that I have there too.
And I'm in that same boat. I told you about a journey that I had recently where I realized that what's happening in the world today is in fact a spiritual war. Yeah. And the people on the other side of that have made it very clear that Christianity is the enemy. Yeah. And they've done everything they can to vilify it. And so if they tell you that's the enemy and you don't like what they're doing, then doesn't that tell you what the solution is? You know, it brought me back to Christ.
Yeah. It's cool to hear you say that, Bill. I love the notion of agnosticism. I love the idea of uncertainty, but seeking. You know, and from my perspective, agnostic, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, there's so much beauty embedded in these religions. And from my standpoint, we're all speaking the same thing, just in a different language. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Totally. I tell people all the time, I say it on the show all the time. Yeah. I don't care what you believe in.
Exactly right.
As long as what you believe in is based on love. Yeah. And it's something bigger than you.
Right. Yeah. And
I would, and you know the difference between walking through life without thinking there's something bigger than you, and the power and strength that you get when you realize that there is something bigger than you.
Without question.
It gives your life meaning.
It gives your life meaning, and it takes you, there's no better pathway to depression than being self-involved.
Yeah. You know if you think you're it.
Yeah. If you think you're it and your focus is primarily on me, you know, the pathway out of depression is to ask your brother what he needs. Yeah. Ask your sister what she needs. Ask your parents, ask your friends, your community, what do you need? And then be in service to that. Yeah. Because it will bring
while not neglecting your own stuff.
Absolutely.
But
being fruitful in serving value and service. Yeah. Will bring so much joy to your life. We'll get to that. Yeah. So anyway, so I find MDMA. So I call up a brother of mine. One of my favorite human beings in the world. And he had recently done a bunch of work with MAPS. And he was actually the guy who first told me, you know, hey, would you ever consider taking acid? Yeah. I was like, no, I don't feel like partying.
Was the same guy that now recommended to me? One of your partners with Longship?
Nope.
Oh,
no.
Somebody else.
No, different guy.
Okay.
But you've met him.
Okay.
Amazing human being. And so I called him up and I just said, listen, I can't live in this anymore. I don't know what to do with myself. I haven't slept. I'm starting to lose it, and I'm having suicidal ideation, which is worrisome. Yeah. Never pulled the trigger on that, thankfully. And I think strictly because I had a little girl.
Sure.
And so, you know, my daughter tethered me to this planet. Thank God. Yeah. But falling apart. And so called him up and said, listen, EMDR therapy, it's like 52% effective. The efficacy rate on EMDR is pretty tough. And yet it's the best avenue that we have for therapy.
It's the best option. Yeah.
And yet Johns Hopkins and Harvard had done all this research on MDMA and its utility in PTSD, and it's showing like 83% effective. in a session.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about EMDR therapy for like the next 18 months, and it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
Or can I actually resolve this?
Yeah.
And really heal it.
And what's interesting about, we were talking about this before we hit record on this. So the medicine itself isn't the cure.
Well, we'll get through this, because this is an important
It's
point.
Critical.
Thanks for saying that, Dirge, because it is a pathway and a tool. We'll talk about this.
Yeah.
So the next day I go over to my friend's place, and he gives me the dose, and we go for a walk in the river valley. And after about an hour, and I'm horrified of drugs. Like, I've just watched drugs kill everybody you love. Family.
Yeah.
So I'm horrified of this. Like, I'm profoundly anxious that I'm doing this, but I'm becoming increasingly desperate. And so we go for this walk, and after about 60 minutes, he turns to me. He's like, how you feeling? I'm like, a little floaty. He's like, oh, okay, let's go sit down.
Yeah.
Let's go and sit down on a nice patch of grass. It was beautiful days like this. Well, not quite like this, but beautiful outside.
Yeah.
And so we sat on this patch of grass outside of my mom's condo. And, okay, like, tell me about your life.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So just like this, we started when I was a kid, but we got to all these things that soberly, I just couldn't look under that rock. I was just incapable of engaging with it, because it was just too much pain, just too much horror. But and I just couldn't do it. And now I'm in this space where, because my blood is flush with serotonin, and my amygdala, for the first time in years, has shut off.
And your ego's gone.
Right. So I feel, this is going to sound weird, but for the first time I feel normal.
Yeah. And
so now I'm able to actually engage in this stuff. I thought, and I told my buddy, I told him that, listen, like, if at some point I strip naked and go, hauling ass down 98th Ave, for God's sakes, like, tackle me. And he's like, you don't understand what's about to happen.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, uh-huh. So we sit there, and I have this 4-hour dialogue with this man about everything.
It was probably the best conversation you've ever had in your life.
Yeah. It was the single greatest conversation I've ever had in my life, apart from a couple conversations with my current wife.
Yeah.
She's a pretty incredible human being.
Yeah.
She's a huge component of my healing too.
Yeah.
But definitely, without question. And so I have this experience. I go home afterwards. I never have another nightmare. Okay. So here's the thing. My amygdala is now calm. So in terms of PTSD, what MDMA can do in a session is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
But to your point, despite the fact that it shut my amygdala down now I can rest. So now, and I'm not having these visions of people getting hurt anymore. So I'm feeling more comfortable in my skin. It's robbing me of a great deal of the symptoms of PTSD, which is incredible.
Yeah.
In a session.
Yeah. But all it does is hit pause.
Well, now what's happened is, and I can speak to this now. What had happened was I hadn't grieved anything.
Right.
Because I'd been locked into this post-traumatic stress disorder.
Of course.
So now I'm feeling the weight of the loss of everybody, and I'm going through, and now I'm about to enter into a divorce with my wife, whom, I married Jolene, who's a rock star of a human.
Yeah.
And she and I just went through too much. It was just way too much for the marriage on her. It was too much on me. It was just too much. Just too much. And so just fractured it all. And so we ended up going through a divorce, and now I had to figure out how to grieve. Don't know really how to do that. Never really had to grieve before, in terms of like, what does it mean to grieve? And, it's complicated.
Yeah. It's a skill all in itself.
Truly.
Yeah.
And it requires guidance, and it requires, for me, a community. And I had, another amazing brother, Ryan.
Yeah.
Who calls me up one day. He's like, listen, I've got this therapist coming in from BC. I'm doing some work with her. And if you're interested, you can come out to Kananaskis with me. And this was about 3 years ago.
Yep.
Maybe 3.5, something like that. Come out to Kananaskis with me, and we'll go through this experience together. And so I said, okay. So I brought my now wife with me, and we all went out. And, my wife being my wife is like, I just want to be there to hold you if you need to be held, to go through this with you if you need it, because this is probably going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
And so I had one of my best friends in the world, Ryan Collins, with me. And I had this woman whom I needed her love and affection, and she gave it freely. So I was like, okay, let's do something silly. So we go out to Kananaskis and we go through this whole psychedelic therapy process with this therapist out of British Columbia.
Yeah. Who, and I don't know if we probably can't say her name, but like she would be, like she's in the top handful of people in Canada doing this kind of work.
Oh yeah.
Like this woman she knows her stuff.
Like this is she's a professional.
Yeah. My sister knows her pretty well and she just speaks
a remarkable woman.
Yeah.
Like an incredible woman.
Yeah.
We rent out a suite in the hotel, and Kananaskis plays a very important role in my heart. I spent a lot of time out there with Holos and working out there with Ryan Pomeroy and his team. And so, I was very comfortable there already.
Yeah. And for those, like for some of our American listeners who maybe don't know what Kananaskis is, Kananaskis is like, it's among the most beautiful places on this planet.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look real. Like you're in this mountain range and it's like, there's mountains and then there's mountains.
Right.
And Kananaskis it's something else.
Incredible.
Like, when I was in university, I worked 3 years at the golf course.
Oh, you did, eh?
Yeah, it was no fun at all.
I'm sure that was hell.
And like, so 3 straight summers, and there was never one day where I didn't wake up and go, holy shit, look where I am today. Like it doesn't even look real. So like to do this kind of work there would be
right. And
pretty extraordinary.
A buddy of mine, a good friend of mine, owns the hotel out there. And then one of the closest people in the world to me designed the Nordic Spa out there.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like a second home.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a good place to do this kind of work. So we went out and the lady put us under MDMA paired with LSD and put us into meditation. Now, this is a long trip. LSD has
this is not a quick one.
No, it's a good 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
And so we start early in the morning, and I'm working through some stuff, and she's asking some pointed questions, and we're going through some grieving stuff, and I'm feeling good. And then we get to meditating, and she closes the blinds, turns on some tribal music, and gets us to just sit. Yeah. And now the whole idea is now just let go. Let go of everything. Let your brain take you to where it needs to go and then deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I sit down and start meditating, and almost immediately I'm in the middle of the ocean. And you've heard this story on a number of occasions at this point, but I'm in the middle of the ocean, and like it's just so vivid. Like I am there in the ocean.
Yeah. It's pretty weird. Like when you're in LSD, and it's like when something like that happens, it's like somebody just turned the channel on the TV.
Yep.
Like it's like I was here, and now I'm on an airplane,
and now
I'm here,
I am on an airplane. Like I'm not dreaming that I'm on an airplane.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I'm on an airplane. It's a profoundly interesting experience. And so I'm in the ocean, and horrible weather. It's cloudy and raining and lightning and thunder and wind is blowing.
Yeah. And it's probably so real. You're feeling the wind.
You're
feeling
yeah.
the rain.
Like I'm there.
It's happening.
And waves. And I'm on this Longship. I'm on this Viking boat. And I'm looking around, and I've got all of my brothers, like Ryan Collins and Hank Van Wielden and Jared Smith and Ryan Vespi and John Trapp, and like
your boys.
I've got my boys, like this group of men who shouldered me during all of this shit.
Yeah.
And I was conscious of it, obviously. I mean, I love these guys. But it was the first time that it dawned on me that I was able to survive all of this because I had these incredible men around me who were carrying me, who were not carrying me, but fucking rowing with me in the shit.
Yeah.
Like I'm in
But you know
boat.
what? Carrying you when you need.
Yeah. Like
right?
I'm in the boat.
Fell down, you picked me up, let's go.
We're in the boat, right?
Yeah.
And the waves suck and the weather sucks. And I'm looking around at all of my guys, and all of my guys are in Viking gear. The trippiest thing I've ever seen. And they're all smiling and laughing. No one's talking.
Yeah.
They're just laughing.
Yeah.
And rowing.
Let's go.
And just in the insanity. And it was the perfect metaphor for my life at that point was these guys, like, gloriously and happily, we're going to row through our chaos together. We're going to do it with a smile on our faces because we're together.
Yeah.
And we're not alone, and we can do this together. And
great is that?
Look at my men. Look at these fucking forces of nature.
Yeah.
And it just immediately inspiring. And so I came out of it. And, a couple hours later, I'm in the spa with Ryan, and I'm telling him this. He's like, holy shit, that's quite a thing. But I don't know what to do with that at the time. It's just gratitude, immense gratitude for my guys. It's just a profound gratitude for my men. And, lo and behold, I start the healing process. Things are doing better. I'm now living, I've got 50-50 custody with my little girl. My little girl's doing great. I've got a good relationship with my ex. I've got an amazing relationship that's growing with this woman in my life whom I'd known my whole life, Elaine, and starting to get to know her boys, Kingston and Blake and Harlan, who are incredible in their own right. And so, there's good things.
Yeah.
There's good things appearing in my life again. Mm-hmm. It's okay. So then I end up doing this executive retreat out in San Diego and meeting Mark Divine and going,
universe might be talking a little loud at this stage, eh?
Oh, no kidding. And just following him out and being like, I want to work with you. And he's like, okay, Canadian, sure.
Yeah.
I swear. I think I can do stuff. I think I can take your message and what you're trying to impart and blow that up a little.
Yeah.
And he's already doing this. I mean, he's doing this stuff profoundly. His podcast is very popular.
Yeah.
He's the
best-selling author.
He's a best-selling author. He's written 3 books. He's got a new book, Uncommon, that just came out that's about the 5 mountains, which is all the work that we do in Longship. So strongly recommend Uncommon by Mark Divine.
Yeah.
But just a profoundly cool human being. And so, it's like finding a guy that you want, like that. I want to grow up to be that. So how do I get there? Because this guy's not going to give you shortcuts. Yeah. This is a man who does not believe in shortcuts, right?
At all.
Right. So how do we bring his message to bear? So I come home and I'm thinking about it. I've started this organization, this small investment hold company, this private equity thing called Raven Lake Investments. And we've been funneling cash to certain organizations that are trying to make positive impact in the health and wellness space.
Yeah.
And so coming home and I sit down for coffee with my profoundly good buddy, John Trapp. And I'm talking to Johnny, and, he's working facilitation. He's been doing this stuff corporately for quite some time in terms of health and wellness and profoundly talented at it. Has given his life to it. And I'm just telling him about this experience that I had with this guy and how I want to do something with him. And then John's brain starts running and he starts kind of sticking bricks together. Like, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And so now he and I are starting to share notes every Wednesday for coffee on what we might be able to do together. And I've always wanted to work with Johnny in the first place. I love him. You make your life significantly better by marrying the right people and partnering
surrounding with the right people. Yeah.
Yep.
Rule number 1, you're what you hang around with. Exactly. You are who you hang around with.
100%.
Yeah.
And so, lo and behold, Johnny and I started kind of figuring out what this thing could look like. And then I started talking to Ryan about this thing and Longship and the vision that I had because of him, because of his involvement in my life and bringing me out to help me work through my grieving shit.
Yeah.
And so now Ryan comes in and starts adding his flavor into what this becomes. And now it's Longship. Now we're a year into this thing. We're growing. We've got, close to 30 members at this point. And we're about to, I haven't told you this yet, but we'll talk about it later a little bit. But we're building this October retreat in Kananaskis because Kananaskis, right? It has a ton of meaning. There's a ton of healing out there. It plays an important role in my life.
Yeah.
And we get to kind of do this work as brothers and like a big, powerful group of men all coming together with the purpose of now survive to thrive. Let's get each other as healthy as humanly possible so we can be in service to this world the way that we know we can.
Yeah.
It's cool, man.
Yeah,
it's interesting how life plays out.
It's so interesting. And as I'm listening to your story, like these are kind of the things that I'm picking up. And I already knew your story, but like to hear it again, the way you like to hear it in the sequence that you delivered it. So we all get the opportunity in this life to either rebel or emulate from what we were taught.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There are lots of people who had, what most people would, give anything to have the life they have, and they just rebel for whatever reason.
Yep.
Then there are other people who, they're shown a very dark path and they'll emulate that,
yes.
or the opposite, right? Like you can rebel from good things or rebel from bad things.
Yep.
And there are points in our life where, like they call it a crossroads for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And you get that moment, and that moment for you appears to be, when your aunt sat you down.
Yeah.
And had that talk. Right.
Yeah.
And then what you chose to do from that stage, because it would nobody would have blamed you for just drinking yourself to death at that stage.
No, nobody.
Nobody. No. It would have been sad, but everybody
would have understood.
People went, well, yeah,
we get it.
Shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
To have the courage to go, okay, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
It was a big decision.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about this before we turned the camera on. This world is a world of shortcuts.
Yes.
This world is a world of take a pill. You need to lose weight. Here's some Ozempic.
Yes.
Don't worry about diet and exercise.
Don't actually lose
weight.
Do that. Just let it melt off your bones by feeding yourself a bunch of chemicals.
Yeah. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
Or, don't actually do personal work.
Right.
There's pills that will mean you don't have to think about that personal work. Let's do that instead.
And now the flavor of the month, as you and I were talking about, is psychedelics, and this notion that psychedelics is somehow going to resolve your everything. It is not going to do that.
It actually really pisses me off when I hear that.
Yeah.
Because, again, we were talking about this before, but I went away to a personal development retreat called Hoffman, which I still got to do a Hoffman show. I got to do a show about that.
Absolutely. That's such an incredible experience.
It's amazing. It's a 7-day course, changed my life.
Yeah. Very intense though. Hey.
Oh yeah. It's not a pleasure cruise.
No,
it's pretty ugly, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
But there were people who, there was, I think 20 people in my class, and a couple of them, they showed up because somebody made them show up. And they were there all week, but they didn't fucking do anything. So they didn't get anything out of it.
Right.
So it would be the equivalent of there's this university course I really want to take. Mm-hmm. And then you show up and you just put your earbuds in and you watch YouTube while the course. Well, what do you think you're going to get out of it? Right. And it's the same thing with psychedelics.
Yes.
So when you took MDMA, if you would have just said, oh, this is great, I'm going to go for a swim.
Right.
This feels awesome.
Benefit. Yeah.
You wouldn't have gotten anything. But instead,
right.
you started to have a conversation, and the medicine does soften your feelings in a way where you can have that conversation you couldn't have had otherwise.
You can roll over rocks, so you wouldn't. Yeah.
But you still got to have the stones to do it.
Yes.
And so
that's why guidance too. Like
you need a guide.
Because a guide, it's a good guide will walk you through some of this stuff and won't. It's not like talk therapy.
No.
You're doing most of the talking, but a good guide will every now and again interject to put you on a certain path. So to refocus you, to keep going down the pain.
Yeah, you actually become your own therapist in the medicine.
Yes.
But
it's why it's so effective.
But the guide, when they see you're getting off track or going down the road that's not going to serve you, they'll just very gently bring you back.
Right.
Or if they also know that there's something that you got to get to, because there's waves in it all, right? So when that's why having the kind of the rehearsal beforehand, talking about what you're going to talk about, they'll know when you're right there. Yes. It's okay. Now's the time.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about this.
Like the most talented guy I think I've ever met in this field. And I'm so excited that you're going to go and meet him.
Oh, God, yeah.
Sean Chester.
Yeah.
Native Guides.
For those of you who don't know who Sean Chester is, you want to know who Sean Chester is.
Aubrey Marcus, he did a couple of podcasts.
He just did a third.
Yeah. Watch him on Aubrey Marcus or check out Native Guides.
It'll blow your mind.
Guys, like Ryan again, because Ryan just keeps putting me in this super challenging mental position.
Yeah.
So he went out to see Sean, right?
Is in the middle of the jungle in Colombia. Yeah.
And Sean has this insane story. And Ryan came back because, of course, this is such a Ryan Collins thing. He came back with a best friend.
Yeah.
He came back. And, of course, Sean
They're boys.
Like, yeah, that's my boy. And So Ryan was telling me about his experience. And it's ayahuasca. It's 10 days, 3 ceremonies of ayahuasca. And
And this is not a pleasure cruise.
So he's telling me about it, and I'm thinking, this sounds like absolute hell. Like you're in
like
the
they
middle
beat
of the
you a
jungle.
stinging nettle at one point. There's all sorts of crazy shit. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the easiest part.
Right.
Like ayahuasca is such a potent little molecule, and it doesn't soften the blow of anything.
No.
And so Ryan is talking to me about his experience, and we're getting to know Sean Chester because Sean wants to know a little bit about Longship. And so we're talking to Sean about Longship. And so I'm able to get on the horn with this guy. And, you know, again, one of the honors of my life is like meeting Divine. Meeting Sean was one of those things where it's like, that guy, I also want to grow up.
Yeah, like he's one of the most, like I've only had one Zoom call with him. But I left the call and I was like, holy shit, who did I just talk to?
I know. And I was like a handsome Gandalf. I know.
Yeah, he's something else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like a big, and he's like built like a tree. Like he's just this formidable guy. And then when you talk to him, he's the softest, kindest.
Well, you can barely hear him.
Yep. He's just a beautiful man.
Yeah. And then the fact that he's working with the people he's working with.
Right.
So like the tribe that he's working with, they've, it sounds really fucked up.
Oh, it's insane.
They've been tracking this tribe for the last 800 years.
Yep.
The average lifespan of the people in that tribe is 120 years old.
These people are old. And like, just wait until you meet them. These are the happiest people I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
So Ryan somehow convinces me. Well, I'm easily convinced. Let's face it. Ryan's talking to me. He's like, you know, we should go out and see Sean. And I'm thinking, because I'm always business development. Like I love business development. It's a vocation. I love it. I'm like, you know, okay, we'll go and make this financial little business development for Longship. We'll go out.
Little did you know.
Like, you know, you idiot. Do you know what you're walking into? So I took it seriously. I got on the phone with him and I started having a conversation. He goes, you have some experience with the psychedelic therapy? I said, yeah, I've been through a number of sessions.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay. He goes, consider that an education. But what you're coming out here to do is cleanse. We're going to purge you. We're going to get you clean.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, okay, I don't understand necessarily the metaphor, but let's go do it. And I got scrubbed, man. We went out there at the end of last year in December, just me and Rye, and we were out there with two just beautiful, beautiful guys.
Yeah.
I hope this is your experience because our group was just amazing.
I don't think anybody would go do that.
Yeah.
If they weren't beautiful humans.
Yeah. Well, people are funny though. There's like drug tourism, right? Where people just want to go and have an experience and that's fine.
I think Sean would weed them out so quick.
Sean's seen it. He's had that, but Sean wants you to do work. Like you're going to do work and it's ayahuasca. You are going to do work. Like there's just no point.
Like you don't have a choice, right?
Nope.
Like it's right in your face.
Like my first night being out in the jungle, you know, we're in this Maloka with this tribe of just profoundly beautiful humans. I have never felt God's presence more clearly in my life than I did with them. They are godly. Like these are the most spiritual, beautiful humans I've ever known. Yeah. And I'm also there, you know, with this oak tree of a man who is just an inspiration in and of himself. And to have his support too, just gives you this kind of confidence of, okay, this is going to be hard, but I'm supported in a way that I don't think I've ever felt supported, being this level of vulnerable, you know, in the middle of arguably the most beautiful place I've ever been. But I mean, it's the heart of Colombia.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're in an interesting spot.
Yeah.
And there's this huge ceremony going into taking your first cup of ayahuasca. Ryan and I take it and, you know, give a little wink to each other in the hammocks and then fade into it. And I heard
it tastes great.
It tastes like a homeless man's taint. It's going to be a rough, but it's just the worst. If you can just try to figure out.
I've heard it tastes just the worst thing you can taste.
It's a tough thing to get down.
Yeah.
It's a tough tea.
Sounds awesome.
But you get it in you and then just lay down and then sink into it. And it's quiet. I mean, we start usually around 9, 10 at night. So it's dark in the jungle and all you hear is the jungle.
Sure.
And I spent 4 hours that first night talking to my family and I couldn't see them. but I felt them. Yeah. And like, I really felt them. And so I was able for the first time in my life to get some semblance of closure, because I never got to, they all died suddenly.
Yeah,
I never got to say goodbye to them.
Talk. Yeah.
So I got to say goodbye to all of them.
Oh man, what a gift.
Oh man. And then, you know, so I have this talk and it's 4 hours of deep conversation and just, but I'm not sitting there grieving. I'm not weeping. I'm just in love with them. And I'm telling them how much I love them and I miss them, but I'll see them. Mm-hmm. And it's all good. Like, I'm okay. I'm doing, you know, good things, good work. I think they'd be proud of me. You know, Adela's good. The life is good. You know, I've got 3 stepsons whom I know they would love. I've got a new wife whom I know they did love. And so, you know, I'm good. And so it was really just a beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
And came out of it, puked as hard as I've ever puked in my life. Oh, because that's part of the experience. Is
you clenched up when you said that, like,
because the muscle memory.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's times where you've got like food poisoning.
Right.
You got food poisoning and you're puking to the extent that you think your eyes
coming
are
out of
fall
both
out of your
ends,
skull.
you feel like you're gonna die. Yeah.
This is like that, but also you're a tiger or something. Right. You're just like screaming into this fucking
big
bag.
Pukey
just,
tiger. Yeah.
And then I had this incredible release. I said goodbye to them and immediately I purged.
Right.
And then I sat up and I look up and there's this, you know, giant, handsome, bearded tree in front of me. He's like, Sean's like, how you doing? I'm like, I feel amazing, incredible. Yeah. And so that was the experience. I mean, both nights, I said that the second night I went into it, I got to speak to my brother and I voiced some frustration because we had a hard time near the end, you know, dealing with addicts. Jesse was beautiful, but he was not himself anymore. And so I got to voice that, my frustration, but it was never angry. It was just, I love you,
closure.
Bud. I love you, bud. I got to say some stuff. And so I got to say that to him. And again, second night, puked heavy. It was a tough night, but worth it. And then I was, you know, I'm going into the third night. I'm like, I did it. Last night, tonight, I'm just going to focus on flowers. Like, I'm just going to see if I can have a nice little journey in the middle of the jungle, be comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Have a good night. And I'm like, I know what the experience looks like now. So getting a little cocky and go into this whole thing. And then the third night, it was like God was sitting there and going, okay, so now that we've found our closure and now that we've gone through all the things that happened to you, why don't we focus on all the little shitty things that you've done in your life where you've sacrificed your character for something meaningless and stupid. Why don't we go through all of the mistakes? Let's go through a slide reel of every fuck up you've ever had.
Man.
And it was so painful. Like I could feel, it's hard to describe, but I could feel my shame and guilt in my bones. And like it hurt. I was in so much pain trying to sit in this hammock and I'm trying to get comfortable and I can't. And finally, and then Sean will at one point come to you during the evening and ask you if you want a second cup.
Right.
And your answer typically should be, okay, because the whole idea is to get the work done.
Right.
So no matter what you're going through, you kind of want to press.
Yeah.
And so Sean comes and I feel this giant hand on my shoulder and, hey, Code, second cup. And he's not really asking either. It's
like it's time.
Second cup. Okay. So I get up and I turn over and Ryan is sitting right across from me in the hammock.
Yeah.
I look at him and I said, how's your trip? And he's been struggling. And so he goes, for the first time, he's like, yeah, good. Like I'm having a good trip. Like I'm working through some stuff, but it's good. So there's beauty here and I'm in a good place. I said, are you going to go for a second cup? And he goes, probably not. Like I probably don't need it. I just kind of want to sit here for a little bit. And he's like, what about you? And I'm like, I'm in pain, man. Like I'm hurting and I'm going through some stuff and some pretty awful guilt. And, fuck it. And so I get up and I walk over. I'm like, all right, just take the second cup. Like, here we go. And so drink the second cup. And poor Ryan is looking at me. He's like, oh. So he gets up and follows me over to Taita, takes the second cup. Both get back in the hammock and just immediately descends and goes through some tough shit. Mine gets kicked up another level. So I'm like, seeing things about me that I hate and feeling it in my body. And then I start having a discussion with myself about, is this who you are going to be? Is this who you want to be? Like all of this shit, all of these things, big, small, medium-sized, hurt one person, hurt 10, hurt somebody you loved, hurt a stranger, all of it. Is this who you want to be? No. Okay, then sit strong. Stop fucking squirming in your hammock. Sit strong, sit still. Accept it. Accept what you've done. Accept also that you will leave this shit, this component of your character, this brokenness, this mess, this sadness, this anguish. You'll leave it dead here in the jungle. You're leaving this in Colombia. Okay. So sit, and Sean will talk to you about some of this stuff, but sit strong, sit still, sit in my hammock, breathe. And the pain just fades away. And the visuals and all the horrible stuff fades away. And now it's relief. Now it's stillness. And there's no euphoria either. It's just stillness. And then I puke. The purge will come in the most interesting moment. But I got nothing in me. And so I'm just retching. But I'm retching so hard that Ryan is worried about me. Like harder than any other night. And I'm just retching and retching and retching, like I'm puking out my guilt. I'm puking out all of these things, this stuff, this demon inside of me that's been living inside of me and making me something that I'm not. And I'm getting it out finally. And so and nothing comes up, but I retch for like 2 minutes. And finally I put the basket back down, bucket, and sit up. And then like Sean comes over, he's like, are you all right? I said, I feel like a workout. Like I feel like going to the gym. I feel amazing. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He goes, but don't work out because you're on ayahuasca, so no push-ups. Yeah. But go over to the fire and just spend time with your ancestors. And so then I get off my hammock and I go wander over to the fire and I sit by the fire. And I just think of my ancestors and, my lineage on, my father's and my mother's side and gratitude for it, despite the hardship of it. I am so excited to hear your experience of what this is going to be, because it will be one of the hardest things you've ever done, Dirge. It will also be one of the most meaningful things you've ever done. Yeah. And you will have done it with one of the greatest men that I've ever met.
Yeah, it's funny. So I had David Boyle on he talked about his thing. David's got one of my favorite podcasts.
That's a good podcast.
So awesome. He's great.
That was a great get, Dirge.
Yeah, it was a good get.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a beauty.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny, like I was like, when he was telling his story of his journey, like I was like my anxiety's coming up to here and you're telling it like the same thing. It's like, oh shit. But then you said the exact same thing he did, which was, it was the hardest thing I ever did and the best thing I ever did. Like, you got to do it.
And this is why it's so important. Like ayahuasca tourism is becoming a thing and people are starting to do ayahuasca in their basements and shit. I know. Don't, again, like what we talked about.
Do right.
For God's sakes, treat this stuff with respect because it requires respect. This stuff deserves as much respect as you can possibly give it.
Yeah.
And do it with people who are professionals in this space and who will hold that space for you powerfully.
Because the mentality you have when you go into it and the people you do it with. Yeah. Like everybody says, well, I'm afraid of a bad trip. Right? Like, I would never do psychedelics. I heard a guy that had a bad trip. Well, yeah. Who'd they do it with?
Right.
Where'd they get the medicine from?
Right. What was your intention going in?
What was your intention going in? Well, no shit. You had a bad trip. Right. You just took a bunch of drugs and you didn't even know which direction you're pointing.
Chewed on 5 grams of mushrooms and went to a party and I had a bad trip.
Yeah. Oh, really? Like, let me put on my surprised face.
Like this is medicine. Make no mistake.
Yeah.
This is the most therapeutic medicine I've ever known, but it requires, clinical regulation. It needs to be legalized in a fashion whereby people can access it without doing it illegally.
Well, but then also like if you've got any chance that there's schizophrenia in your DNA or, anything like that, like this will send you. This will send you to a place you never want to go, and you might not be able to get back from.
There are risks associated
Huge
with this,
risks,
which could damage the entirety of your life as well. So you have to be, this stuff, again, like, it's not to be trifled with.
No.
So take it seriously, but it has, in the right hands and with the right groups and the right therapists and the right guides, it has offered me, an ability to heal through, some pretty interesting stuff. So
man,
it's brought me here today. I get to hang out with you now.
Well, and so that's what I sort of want to close with. So, and I really hope it's okay that I'm saying what I'm about to say.
I'm sure it is.
So, I live my life by 4 rules.
Yeah.
You are who you hang around with.
Yeah.
You are what you think about. Mm-hmm. Good things happen to good people.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason.
I love those.
That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy.
No.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to hit the ditch a couple times.
That's right.
It doesn't mean you're not going to go through some shit.
That's right.
But what it does mean is if you look at everything that happens to you, and you can't look at it this way all the time, but if you can eventually look at things and go, okay, this is the worst thing I've ever gone through, but there's gifts here.
Yeah.
And if you, and I know you are, but if you're like me and you think that the reason that you're put on this earth, the goal is very simple. Did I leave this place better than when?
Correct.
Would this place have been better with me than without me?
Yes.
Right? When you die, if you look back and you look at it all and you're in a net positive, then good, you lived a good life.
Right.
If you're in the net negative, then you wasted one.
Yeah.
If you're way in the negative, then you probably, would have been better if you weren't here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you had to go through some really, really shitty things to be the person that you are today. But that person that you are today wouldn't exist had you not gone through those awful things.
That's true.
And the person you are now, and not to say that the person that you would have been otherwise wouldn't have made the world a better place, but the person you are now, it's going to change this place.
Yeah. Thanks, Tersh. That's an incredible compliment. I appreciate that.
Like the impact that you're going to have on this place and already are, like to me, just watching, you're in, like, it's not chapter 1 of your life. It's chapter 1 of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right? Like if your life was 2 books, we're in chapter 1 of book 2.
Yes, that's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm so obsessed with growth and I have so much respect for people who want to grow.
Yeah, I know you do.
And there's so much, and the reason I respect it so much is I know how fucking hard it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, growth is not easy. I don't care what kind of growth you're talking about.
No, it's not. And growth comes from discomfort.
It comes from discomfort.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible to grow without pain.
That's right.
And then what you do with that pain is everything.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Yeah.
And you, like, that crossroads, okay, Cody, where are you going?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are we going to drink ourselves to death?
Yeah.
Or are we going to pull ourselves out? And not only did you pull yourself out, but now, like, once you got on that path, like, you're just scaling Everest and you're doing it on your tippy toes right now. Like, you're just kind of dancing up the mountain. And, but it, like, it didn't start that way.
No, God. No,
definitely did not. And so, I respect the hell out of the fact that you're on that path. I respect it even more that you're looking at this going, okay, I know things now that most people don't know.
Yeah.
And while I don't want them to have the loss that you don't want them to have the losses that you did, but if they can benefit from your growth and your knowledge and your wisdom, and you can help guide them so that they can all grow and make this world a better place and be a better dad and a better friend and a better husband, a better son, a better boss, a better whatever. Like, this world that we're in, somebody somewhere decided that having good, strong, healthy men was not what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Right? And that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes, it is.
But they vilified masculinity and strong men and strong Christian men and the nuclear family and the.
Yeah.
And then it's going to take, and this is why I call it the army of great men, because it's going to take an army to rebuild this place, one soldier at a time. And the impact that you're having, like, I see it, the world hasn't seen yet. They're gonna.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They're gonna. And every time, like you talk about Ryan's ability to network and yours too. So when, you start to build this army and you've got, look at this Sean Chester guy, look at Mark Devine, look at John Trapp, look at that. And then one day you look around and you go, holy shit, you see what we built? And then you see this, the ripples of all the, like, because it doesn't just impact the men that you're dealing with, it impacts their friends and their sons and their daughters.
It's the whole reason, right?
It's the whole reason.
To be in service to that. That's
and so, sometimes we don't get to choose what puts us into greatness. And oftentimes what pushes you into greatness is something you would have never chosen. Yeah. Like you wouldn't have chosen the losses that you had.
Oh God.
Ever.
No.
Right? Not. You'd have never said, well, let's do this so we can do this. You never did. But you don't get a choice in that. The only choice you get is what am I going to do with this shit?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And it's just fucking so inspiring to watch the way you do it.
Thank you.
And it's just such an honor to do it. Like to be any part of what you're doing and to know you and to call you my friend and my brother. It's just the greatest. So.
Well, the same to you, buddy. I mean, having you as part of our founding crew with Longship has been such a joyous occasion for me to get to know you better.
It's been fun.
It's been fun.
Well, it helps that we've got such a good crew.
We do.
Right.
Yeah.
I also like the little rivalry we've got with the other crew. We've got these challenges and stuff. Those donkeys, fuck them. Our crew's way better. And I joke, but they're all awesome. I know a bunch of the guys in that crew. They're great.
Well, yeah, and I'm the facilitator for that crew. So fuck you. But
but it's awesome. Like even just a little bit of competitive nature and
exactly right. Like I love these guys, and I'm so proud of men who show up and put their stuff on the table in concert with a crowd of other men in front of everyone, and then we all examine it objectively and go, okay. Like, let's work together, boys. Yeah. We got this. We got it. All of our hurt and all of our pain.
Yeah.
It's not beyond our ability as a community to deal with it. Yeah. So it's inspiring.
Yeah.
And you guys inspire the ever loving shit out of me. Well, it's incredible.
It's like the timing of all this is just so interesting. I've got a real good friend back home who he just lost his wife in a really just a very sudden, unexpected way. And he's left picking up the pieces. And I know he's going to make all the right choices. I know he's going to do it. And I know he's got to walk through hell for a minute. And it's going to be awful while he's going through it. Mm. And it's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. And the reason I know is because he's got brothers like you do and like I do and all that stuff. And that's what it's going to take, man. This world, we've done such a good job of shielding our kids from anything that resembles adversity. Yeah. Anything, if it's hard, it can't be good. It doesn't, if you don't get rewarded instantly, it's not worth it. Right.
This world has never been more comfortable, and comfort is the killer.
Cody, this was a great experience for me to have this show with you. Thank you for coming on.
That's my pleasure.
I know you're a busy guy. I know you got lots of things going on, but to take a couple hours of your life for me and the Army and everybody else, it's such an honor to have you here, man. And I'm just so proud to call you a friend.
Well,
thank you,
brother. I appreciate everything. Thanks for having me on, pal.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
I'll see you at the next Longship meeting.
We'll see you there.
All right, brother.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, man. Take care.